Hello and welcome to this tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at how I achieve a marble effect on stonework. And to start with, we've primed our base with Vallejo polyurethane primer, and then we're going to hit it with some deep blue by scale 75. Now I'm running this through my Hardran Steenbeck 2-in-1, the CR Plus, at about 20 to 25 psi. And I've diluted the deep blue with a ratio of about 2 or 3, maybe 4 drops of thinner to paint. And all we're going to do here is get a nice solid base colour laid down on all the areas we want to be marble before we move on with the process. Now, I've chosen this deep blue because I want a fairly vibrant white marble, and I think this is going to provide an excellent amount of contrast against that. This is going to be the sort of final colour for the veins in this marble, and hopefully it'll turn out just the way we want it to. Now, to achieve the sort of veined marble effect, we're going to use the Humble multi-surface wipe, or baby wipe. First of all, we need to dry it out, and apologies here, I just want to make sure it's in focus. It needs to be dried out, and then as you can see, all we're going to do is stretch out those fibres. Now, what this is for is as those fibres pull apart, we're going to achieve almost like a spider web. And that spider web and the holes within it are what's going to create the veined appearance on the surface of our marble. Now, as you can see, I'm going to stick my finger behind it. Hopefully, it will give us exactly what we need when we wrap it over the top of that dark blue surface that we put down a moment ago. By wrapping it around a miniature, like I am doing with my finger here, we can see the effect we're going to achieve. Now that we've wrapped our miniature and secured it with a little bit of tape, we're going to hit it with our first highlight colour, which in this case is graphite by scale 75. We're going to put this through the airbrush at about 20 to 25 psi, and with the same sort of dilution as the blue base coat that we put on. Now, what's really important here is that you let this dry before you move anything. That way we avoid any streaking that may occur. And we're going to apply a couple of quite thin layers to achieve the effect we want, before moving on, once it's completely dried, to our second highlight colour, which in this case is Flat White by Tamiya. Again, we're going to apply a number of thin layers all over to achieve the sort of marbled effect we're after, making sure that we let it completely dry before we move anything. Now, it's worth pointing out that I decided to move the wet white mask in between the two layers, both the graphite and the flat white. I wanted a bit of tonal variation with the overall finish that we'd achieve. Now, another really important consideration is how tightly you wrap this mask over your miniature. The tighter the mask, the sharper the lines you're going to see when you eventually remove it. And conversely, the more loosely the miniature is wrapped, the more blurry those lines are going to become in the end. It's just something to bear in mind when you try this yourself. And so here we have the end result of our marbled effect. This is an ideal opportunity to start working on any extra details, such as this large Thousand Suns emblem. Now, what I'm doing here is blacking it out, ready for some metallics, and I'm using Vallejo Model Air Black to do this. This is simply because I wanted a solid base coat for my metallics, which will be going down shortly afterwards. As you can see, the veins in this marble are really subtle. This is exactly the effect I was going for. If you wanted something a bit more sharp, then potentially using larger gaps in the web structure of that wet wipe would have been appropriate. But as you can see here, this is very subtle and mottled, with the idea being that those slabs are quite large, and as such there are going to be lots of very small, and at this sort of scale almost imperceptible, veins within it. Overall, I'm really happy with this, but it requires a little bit more in terms of detail work to make sure it all comes out as a finished piece. Onto the base coat for the metallics. This has rapidly become one of my favourite paints to use, and it's Decayed Metal by Scale 75. It is a wonderful, rich, metallic brown colour, and it serves as, well, frankly, the perfect base tone for any gold, brass, bronze, anything of that sort. It's got excellent coverage, and once it's diluted slightly, as it is here, it is an absolute dream to work with. And this is what we're going to use to base coat this large Thousand Suns emblem, with the intention of highlighting it up a little bit, maybe with some cold tones to give us exactly the finish that we want by the end of things. On to our first highlight. In this case, we are going to use Dwarven Gold by Scale 75, and we're going to use a really diluted layer to create some more warmth in terms of tone, and we're not going to apply it all over the surface of this emblem, so that we generate a little bit more interest by letting some of that decayed metal shine through. This step will provide some really interesting tonal shifts once the final highlight has been applied, and as such I think it's a really worthwhile step for the amount of time it takes to go through with it and apply it. On to our final highlight, and for this we are going to use gold from Vallejo's Metal Colour series. This is a much paler gold, and yet has some exceptional coverage, as is kind of like the hallmark of the Metal Colour series. I really enjoy working with this stuff, although it does have a tendency to flow very easily into recesses, so you do need to be a little bit careful with it at times. As you can see, I'm not applying this in broad strokes. This is jabbed at and dappled onto the surface so that we gain the benefit of the layers underneath, which will add a little bit of warmth here and there by allowing those base coats and the first highlight to shine through a little. We then create a hopefully tonally interesting finish to this emblem, and I like to think of it as being a little bit indicative of the sorcerer's ways of the Thousand Suns, where not all is quite as it seems. Maybe it's just me, but I really enjoy that sort of thing. So, admission time. I kind of forgot to record me using some gloss varnish to protect the work we'd already done in preparation for this pin wash using oil paint. But all I did was put 2 or 3 thin layers of gloss varnish by the Lucky Varnish from AK through the airbrush all over the piece. What we've got here is, in a little separate mixing pot, we have black oil paint by Abtalon 502 and some white spirit, and what we're going to do is create a oil wash. It's quite thin, but that's kind of the point. Now we move on to our pin washing. Now what we're going to do here is take a synthetic brush loaded up with the oil paint mixture we just made up and touch it against the ends of the cracks in this marble surface. As you can see, it's going to draw the oil wash down into the crack and along it. This is done through the use of capillary action, thanks to the gloss varnish that we put down earlier. That really low tension surface is going to allow the oil wash to run along the crack, filling it, providing wonderful amounts of contrast and allowing those recesses to be more easily identifiable. Now, hopefully, this will provide exactly the kind of finish that we're looking for without causing any sort of hardship in terms of application, and make this a really easy job to get a really good high quality finish on the end product, as it were. As you can see, those recesses are now really starting to stand out thanks to this oil wash, and it is one of my favourite techniques to use in situations like this. And with that, our marble is complete. Thank you very much for your time. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and if you have, knock that like button. If you've really enjoyed it, maybe give that subscribe a prod. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye bye.